okay, we're both in the bed. She lays and she gets closer to me. That's my indication that she wants to initiate something, or at least for me to be around her in that type of
Hmm.
setting. And then in our minds, we're like, okay, I know two moves. They've worked for me in the past. They should work for me in the future. And that's all that you stick to versus saying that, hey, me just holding her, touching her body in a certain way may be enough to get her to the point where she's really enjoying it. Where in the past, I maybe didn't do that because you're
Hmm.
paying attention to the way her body reacts. And then when you have her at that point in a heterosexual relationship, it's like, okay, I know that this is going to go somewhere. She's ready. I don't want, even though this sounds bad, she's prepped,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? She's
Yeah.
primed and you're ready to go because it's not so much as you come home, you kick your shoes off, honey, I'm home,
Yeah.
and then you get straight into penetration, and then when you're done, you're like, okay, is dinner ready?
Yeah.
Right? Maybe 100 years ago, 200
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
ago, when we didn't know any better, right? It's 2024. We know a lot better. There's
Yeah.
people like you educating us and continue to educate us. So how can we let go of some of the, I don't want to say the old ways, but some of the prior ways we used to conduct ourselves in the bedroom and say, this person is different from the last person. So I got to relearn what's going to work in the bedroom going forward.
Yeah. And also, this person is still maybe still the same person from last week or even yesterday, but she could be in a completely different mood today. She's got different hormones going on. She didn't sleep as well yesterday. She's had a hard day at work. Like there's so many factors in the mix. And I think curiosity is one of the key things. Just being curious, being open, and being willing to explore and experiment is key. Like really taking this mindset out of like, this is the formula. I do this, then I do this, and she does this. She responds in this way. It's like instead, if we can just be curious and like, okay, who are we today? Because you might be the one who's tired and not quite in the mood, and she might be the one who's like, come on, let's go. And you're like, actually, I just need it. I need a nap. So it's like there's so much that we have to consider. And I think just being curious, being in that communication of like what's here right now, what do we both need, and giving that a bit of space. And just letting go of the rigid idea of it needs to look a certain way, it needs to be a certain way, because intimacy can be so many different things and can mean different things in any given moment. And I know in my own experience with partners, some of the most profound, amazing orgasmic experiences have just started from just something really organic and curious, where it started as a cuddle and then there was something new just bubbled up to the surface, and we just had this really unique thing, and then it grew from there. And it's like, oh wow, neither of us knew that, as you were saying earlier, wow, this position, I never even considered that before, and all of these things. And it's like just being curious and being open, I think, is the key. Yeah. And I think, I'm not a good cook, but I think when I try and follow a recipe, if I've got standard things that I like to make, if I do rigidly the same thing all the time, I know roughly it's going to turn out the same all the time. But if I try a bit more of this spice, or I add in a few more vegetables, or I leave it to stir a little bit longer, you're going to get something different. And it's worth the experiment.
I had a conversation with someone who watched I think it may have been our first interview and another one, and they asked me the question and I had an answer, but because it was coming from a man and she was a woman, there was like a little bit of hesitation in me saying it and maybe even me understanding that she'd be receptive. And the question she had is, are men and women responsible for their own orgasm?
I love this question.
And I said yes. But it's something that you have to get to that point, in many cases together. Now, how would you answer that question and why?
Yeah, I agree. I think we are all responsible for our own orgasms. I don't believe anybody else can give you an orgasm. Um, you can certainly co-create things, and it can be easier with some people than others for reasons that might not seem really obvious, and clients will tell me that all the time. Like, I struggle with this partner, and with my past partner it was easier, or things like this. But I think we are all responsible for our own orgasms. And a lot of the work I do with women is around giving them the skills and the information and the confidence to find for themselves what works for them through their self pleasure. And when they do that, it when you're able to access your own orgasms and know that you can do that for yourself, it takes the pressure and the load off your partner being like, oh, can I perform well? Can I do this? Is you're not waiting for somebody to give you that something. You can do it, you can experience it yourself. So I think it really is important. And then when we come together then with our partners, we're just in that, like, what's in the moment here today. And sometimes people will orgasm easier than today than they could yesterday, and there can be many variable factors. But yeah, but essentially I do believe we're all responsible for ourselves. Yeah.
Why do you think some people still believe that it's the responsibility of the other person to make them reach a state of orgasm?
Can you say that again just to make sure I've really got there?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example before I ask the question. So what during my conversation with her, she was adamant that this is not someone that I'm with. This is just someone that I know, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, use me as an example. She said that it's your responsibility to make me reach an orgasm, right? And that's
Mm.
how we started having the conversation. And I told her that it's everyone's own responsibility to reach an orgasm. Sure, you can, as you mentioned, co-create it and you could achieve it
Mm.
together,
Yeah.
right? But after everything is said and done, if you didn't orgasm or you did, that's fine. But
Mm.
whether you did or not, you can't put that on the other person, try to shame them into
No.
doing it, right?
Yeah.
So, my question then to pass it on to you that she asked me is that why do you think people still believe that it's 100% the responsibility of the other person? In this example, it's Mangala's responsibility to make me orgasm. It's not
Mm.
on me whatsoever. Why do you think people still
Yeah.
believe that to be true?
I think some of that is partly what we see in movies, what we see in porn. I think a lot of it is like dominant culture for the last couple of hundred years or whatever it is. That there is that it ties in very much with some of the stuff, like some of the, I don't know, like some of the trad wife stuff and stuff that I see out there, of like, it's your responsibility to serve a man and to provide him pleasure and all this stuff. And I think there's a lot of entitlement in that. And I think it works the other way as well. I see some women who get very entitled around this. It's like, oh, well, I need a man with a certain size cock or whatever it is. And it's like, or he's there to please all my needs. And again, I think that's entitlement. And I think there's a lot of immaturity in that as well. It's not someone else's responsibility to make you orgasm. I mean, I think if we're coming at this from an attitude of um, devotion to our partners and respect, then of course we're going to want to give them as much pleasure as possible. But it's not coming from this guilting someone or shaming them or blaming them if they're not getting it right.